So you are suffering temporarily, but everybody is happy in the long run. Can we say so? So can I justify lockdown using utilitarian approach? One of the justifications, I'm not saying the justification, one of the justifications can be utilitarian approach. Yes, Santosh? No?
For few amount of days it can be justified, but extending lockdown beyond that.
See, you are under lockdown for 6 months. Okay, you will be happy for the rest of your life, or more people will be alive. Okay, 6 months you suffer. You will be alive for the rest of your life. You will be safe for the rest of your life. You know, vaccine has been developed, but in the 6 months, everybody has suffered a lot. Not only you, right? They didn't target you because of who you are. There is no such thing as like lockdown only for these people or this age bracket. Lockdown is for everyone. So can I justify lockdown under utilitarian principle?
Being alive doesn't mean that they have good standards of living in the future.
It's better than dead, right?
It's true, but they are living just for the sake of living.
See, ethics does not apply to dead. Dead won't do any actions, so there is no application of law or ethics. Yes, again, see, again, I am telling you there is no perfect answer. Please don't worry about it. Just understand whatever you see in your day-to-day life is also can be applied to utilitarianism. So you have to have that I perspective. Can lockdown be seen in that perspective? Yes or no? Yes. One of the ways to look at it, but not the only way, right? So here we are bothered about the end, that is being alive. Okay, but if I take means also should be equally important. Lockdown should be sensitive. Then that is a different perspective. That is a different ethical approach. So as a policymaker, you need to know what is utilitarianism and what are the other perspectives that can be added. Yes? Okay. I will show you one more case study. Again, before that, there is a Robin Hood dilemma. You know, it's a very funny thing. Yes. Yes, I mean, it's not a true thing. Yes. Yes. So where will Robin Hood end? Where will he stop? He created his own loop, right? Yes or no? So if I was a billionaire and if I had NFT, I would definitely purchase the original comic strip. The last one, the sheer expression, like you are what? Okay, I really liked it. Like, okay, so I mean, this is one way to see the things, right? You know, yeah. No, okay. This is a case study, Alessandro. Yes, so that can be a real life scenario, right? If you are the moral agent, if you are the person who is deciding that who should get the ventilator, who will you give the ventilator to and why? Why is more important rather than who? Both are human lives. We cannot differentiate between one human life and the other human life. We cannot blame a businessman for being a businessman, right? So there is no crime in being a businessman and for traveling. At the same time, the doctor is doing what he loves. Unfortunately, he contracted the same disease. So who deserves the thing? And remember, there is a almost 16 year gap between the two of them. So what is the best case scenario?
I would save Jason, businessman, because
You would save the businessman, okay?
age gap is one thing.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing, doctor is already suffering from other disease
Hmm.
plus COVID.
Hmm.
So, even if we give ventilator, it's not sure that it will reduce his suffering.
Okay, so that's your line of thought. Nice, okay. Yes, Aditya. That is problem, right? Yes. Hmm. Yes, Yashashwini.
Like we need to see the chance of survivability from first.
Both may die. Both may survive also. Unless we try, we don't know. Unfortunately.
But as she stated, like if at all he's suffering from other ailments too.
Mhm.
So he like that exacerbates situation and where the circumstances are unprecedented. So
Moderate chronic, right? It's not severe. If the term is severe chronic obstructive airways, then I would totally agree. If someone with 4 heart stents is there on the bed, why will I prefer him? So severe is one thing. Moderate people, doctor said you will survive for 1 year. People survived for 10 years. So how will we come to a conclusion? But this is a split second decision or a few minutes decision that you have to take. Like you have to take a decision within few minutes. The thing is, being a moral agent, once you take the decision, you have to live it for the rest of your life. I will tell you a scenario. Let's say I have gone with Alessandro because he's a doctor. Hypothetically, he died. Okay, while I gave the ventilator to him, the businessman also died. I took a chance, I took a risk. Yes, and both have passed away. So should I be blamed? Should I blame myself? Nobody will blame me for taking a decision, right? But will I live happily with the decisions I made? Vice versa is true. Going by her logic, I have taken Mr. Jason to the ventilator. He did not make it. At the same time, Alessandro also did not make it.
So taking the consent of the doctor himself.
Okay, so that can be one scenario. But let's say he's unconscious. I mean, real life, all these things happen, right? It's not like there will be an ideal case study for us.
we cannot predict the like outcomes. We try our level best to.
That is what ethics is all about, right? Like that is what a decision maker is all about. You don't see the outcomes, but still you have to take that decision.
But how are we responsible? Like
Hmm.
we have to put some decision to save at least one person.
Hmm.
But if
So that is what I am asking, right? Legally, nobody will say anything to you, but morally, to your own self, can you answer? Did I make a wrong decision? Should I have taken? Will you live with that? So what is your criteria in arriving at such decisions? Can we call it as utilitarian principle? Greater good for greater happiness. Does utilitarianism apply here? Only 2 people, right?
like if at all if a doctor survives, then he may cure many other patients. Or if a businessman.
He may retire 70, right? Okay, fine. Yes. Yes, totally understandable. But does the utilitarian principle apply here? How?
To some extent.
How? There are layers, I don't know. Okay.
Saving one life, it may cause a ripple effect. Like if the businessman comes out, he may go for charity.
But what does utilitarianism say? Greater good for greater number or maximum happiness. So how do I differentiate happiness of Alessandro versus happiness of Jason? So does the principle of utilitarianism even apply here?
That just
I think in that situation, more than happiness of the patients, you check the survivability. Who has more chance of surviving, you will go with that as a doctor.
Okay, so I totally understand your point of view. My simple question is this: does the principle of utilitarianism apply here?
at that junction it may not apply. But
Like at that junction only, only when you're at the junction. Yes, because tomorrow you might say Jason might go on to give birth to someone like Einstein, so he will save the. We don't see all those things, right? So we are at that particular junction. 2 lives. So that's all. Does the principle of utilitarianism apply here? Krishnath?
When we take into consideration the family members, it does apply. Suppose Alexander is unmarried, a single person.
Again, I am not aware of all those things, right? Someone came to your hospital with a stretcher, so you are a doctor. You won't do the background research, right? So you have to take a quick decision. So again, it's two ways to look at the things. For example, if you are the head of that particular hospital, okay, you made a decision, as she mentioned, that survivability. So I will always go for a 52-year-old rather than a 68-year-old because he also have other ailments. But the thing is, I have set a template. From that point onwards, whoever comes to the hospital, what will be the benchmark? Survivability rather than the individual choices. So I am maximizing the happiness of maximum number of people in the long run, assuming they will survive. Right? It's a futuristic scenario. So what looks like an individual choice will have long-term ramifications because you are setting a template more or less for the rest of the society, and if every doctor in the country makes the same decision, it has become a standard. Yes or no? Utilitarianism is what? It's a standard, right? If one person has to die and 10% will survive, just like the trolley example more or less, we almost always come to the conclusion that one person should die. That is an individual choice you made, right? Most of you made the individual choice of killing one person over 10 people. There was no consensus, there was no universal rule, there was no standard. I hope you understand. But everyone came to the more or less the same conclusion using their own rational thought process, assuming that Mr. Jason will survive. Then what will happen? It becomes a standard, it's a norm. Yes, these are simple ways to understand. Now one more last example, because you need to understand utilitarianism in depth because it's a very important topic in your entire ethics paper. Let's say you are a police officer. You chased a serial killer for a long time. Like he kills so many people using new methods, scientific methods and all those things. He's a very smart criminal. Okay. But after 6 or 7 years of continuous struggle, lot of research, you finally identified someone. But there is no concrete proof on that particular criminal. You know in your gut, like 110% know that he's a murderer. Probably he even told you to his face. But because there is no proof, you cannot prove that in the court. Okay. So if you let him go, he will kill more and more people and all the families of the victims will also suffer. Yes. So, but if I plant a fake evidence, he will be punished forever. Will you plant the fake evidence? Again, it's a real life scenario probably. Let the serial killer walk away, who is very smart. He will never probably slip ever again. He made a small slip and you caught him, but even that slip was not good enough to convict him. Then will you plant the evidence? Yes or no? It's a binary, right? And there is no doubt that he is a criminal. Like there is no discussion whatsoever. He is 110% a criminal. He is the smartest criminal you ever met. So you know he is a criminal, but there is no proof. I mean, you know that you saw it, but you cannot prove it anywhere. You will plant the evidence.
But if you go once beyond the rules.
So again, you are the moral agent, right? That's your understanding. So Aditya won't plant.
But all if you go once, it may set a template for the future. Like, but all there are any.
Nobody will ever know, right? Except you and the criminal. Nobody will believe the criminal. You never has.
In the criminal records, like how the evidence, like evidences will be recorded. So if at all in the future, if at all a case study is done and it is proved to be wrong, so
I don't think it will be proved. Let's assume so. Like I'm also smart IPS officer, right? I did not clear UPSC just like that. Yes. I will take all the forensic experts' help and then plant evidence. I colluded with my best friend who is a forensic expert. Then I can give you hypotheticals. Keep on going, right? The thing is, We made sure that the criminal is convicted by a wrong means, but the end is justified, greater happiness for greater number of people. Is it justified, Santosh? Constant surveillance. Probably he stopped murdering people.
Yes, if we stop murdering, then it's
What about the earlier victims?
karma.
Karma. Okay, fine.
But if we try to murder,
We will discuss, that is called as cultural relativism. Okay, fine. Yes? You won't? You won't plant the evidence, okay? You will plant the evidence. You won't plant the evidence. Nobody will know. Yes? No? Yes? Deepti, no. You will plant.
I will not.
You will not plant. Okay, good things. So you write you will never plant. Make sure you plant. Okay. So sorry. Yes. Okay. Sorry. My bad. Okay. The thing is, what if 10 years down the line you came to know that he was actually not guilty?
So you stated that he himself said that.
I am a human being, right? I am biased. I believed it 110% that he is a murderer because I wanted to believe it. Then, you see again, the thing is, in real life and ethics, there are always possibilities. See, I saw him taking the knife out. Okay, I thought he was stabbing the person. Right, anything can happen, and the moment I see a knife in a hand, and for years I wanted to believe someone was a murderer, all I will do is what? Convince myself so deeply that he is a murderer. And that is what human beings do. We all make mistakes, right? So now, going beyond hypotheticals and going beyond all these things, utilitarianism is not that simple. It needs to be understood in depth. Are we clear? So all the examples have their own applications, their own justifications, but there won't be direct one utilitarian approach. You will never have that kind of luxury in the real life.
So what happened in that scenario?
Which one?
That doctor and the businessman.
I don't know. I didn't find out. I don't want to find out. So it's very difficult to differentiate one life and the other life, right? Yes, but that happened in England recently only. Okay, right. Okay. Yes. So teleology, end and the reason. So as all of you know, these are basic definitions which we can be found in any book. So mostly utilitarianism comes under the principle of consequentialism. So here ends are more important than the means. Consequences are everything. As the name suggests, it is simply the normative depends on the consequences. All for me, the only thing that matters is the end. I don't care how I approached it. In the evidence case, for example, means are not important for me, but the end. What is the end? Greater good for greater number of people. Maximize the happiness. Yes, I have taken away criminal. I have given justice to the families. I stopped future murders. So many good things have outweighed one thing I have done. And again, please remember Jeremy Bentham, Stuart Mill, you can see the ages, right? Like the time, 18th century, 19th century. So those are laws or rules framed under that timelines, that circumstances and that situations. For example, recently there was a discussion, right? Is chess racist? Because it always starts with white. Yes or no? And then they finally started to open with black also, right? So chess was invented probably before Buddha, so 2000-3000 years ago or more than that. Yes, do you think that they really thought, you know, okay, we are racist, there are blacks and whites? Is it a wrong thing?
People see through certain lens through
Yes.
what they wanted to see.
You are applying the 21st century rules to such things, but is it wrong to ask that question? Their perspective, they think that it's black and white. Probably it's because of America, right? The slave culture and the racism that still prevails in USA. You don't find that racism directly in India, right? We have Northeast, that is a whole different kind of racism. Yes, you understand. So I wanted to give you the context. Timings change. Okay. Now, so Jeremy Bentham or John Stuart Mill or the utilitarianism we learn in the textbooks, in any standard textbooks, is called as classical utilitarianism. Okay, things change. Even within utilitarianism, it has evolved. And when they say maximum happiness for maximum people, it's not blind. It's not like directly happiness. How do you measure happiness? It's next to impossible to measure happiness. Everybody has his own understanding of happiness. So the net output is what is considered as happiness rather than happiness per se. Okay, so if a teacher starts beating your palm, the gap between the beating is also happiness. Yes or no? Relief for 2 minutes. Yes, I don't know how many of you experienced that. I used to have a daily experience, so I still remember that. Okay, so but the thing is that happiness?
Exact point of time.
Yes, definitely for me it was happiness. So how do I measure it? All the beatings minus the gaps. Output is pain outweighed the happiness. So it's definitely a wrong experience. It's not a moral act. For me, yes or no? For a student who was never beaten in his entire school life, he will never understand the example. Are we clear? So here the net output, like that means the pain caused to the n number of people minus the happiness caused to n number of people, or different various parameters of happiness can be considered as happiness. Okay, so please remember, consequentialism is a claim that acts if morally right, if it is only the act maximizes the good. So here always the intention should be maximizing the good. In the doctor example, I am setting a template which will maximize the good. Okay, right? And if and only if the total amount of good of all minus the total amount of bad, that is the net amount. Net has to be calculated. For example, 10 villages will drown in a river when a dam is constructed, but electricity will be provided to 150 villages. So the net output is 140 villages are happy, or all the 150 technically speaking, right? So it still outweighs the bad. So that net happiness is important for me. Are we clear? Yes. So consequentialism is sometimes mistaken with hedonism. Okay, I was introduced to the term by Kaushik Basu. So he says writing is his pleasure. This is pleasure maximization. This principle is always about pleasure maximization. But if we see, utilitarianism is not pleasure maximization. It says maximize the pleasure for everyone. Yes or no? Hedonism is like selfishness, like not exactly selfishness, it's like personal pleasure. I love writing. Yes, I love eating a particular food. So that is my interest. Yes. So if I try to maximize that, that is not utilitarianism. Yes or no? Utilitarianism is towards the good for everyone involved, and most importantly, it should be rational. What happened? Where did it go?
But all things changes along with that.
Definitely. We are talking about marginal utility. So that is hedonism is not marginal utility, right? So utilitarianism is a much larger concept, and it should be applied to judgments of a certain situations. For example, in judging whether an act is a utilitarian, like moral or not. So again, not utilitarian, it's morality, right? If it's a good thing or a bad thing, I am using the goggles called as utilitarianism. For me, ends are all that matter. So only when I come through certain route, then if I come and conclude, yes, this act is good act or bad act, I am giving a reason. So let's say in utilitarianism or in teleology, there is a concept called as end and utility. So the first and most important objective is greatest happiness for greatest number of people. Yes, that is my single most important objective. Next, it's democratic. In the boat example we have discussed, we are not differentiating on the basis of rich and poor, caste, racism, nothing. You are one among the 10. You are Bill Gates and the poorest man in the line. Lottery, both have to jump. Yes or no? You don't add importance because he is prime minister of a country, president of a country, or common man. Yes. So utilitarianism is more or less democratic, or consequentialism is democratic. Next, it's progressive. Why is it progressive? So any custom. So if any custom, tradition, law, rule, standard, or anything, whatever you call as a determinant of ethics, okay, is not working towards the betterment, it should be abandoned. Yes, I will share the PDF anyhow. Just remember, if you want to write, you can write. But the thing is, it's progressive. Why is it progressive? You remember the determinants of ethics? The first, second classes? So there are so many things that make me come to a decision. But if all those decisions are not moving me towards the betterment of the happiness of everyone involved, then I should abandon that particular belief. If my religion say, give food only to rich people, that the tenet of that religion should be dropped. Why? For me, happiness belongs to everyone. If I give food to everyone involved, let's say there are 10 people, 5 are poor people, 5 are rich people. If everybody is eating, then it is maximization of happiness. If already someone is having a laddu in his hand, I am going to give him one more laddu, but the poor person is not having anything, then that is not appreciable in utilitarianism. And again, there is no one universal utilitarianism. Remember, Stuart Mill has his own theory, Bentham has his own theory, and they were set in a different times. So we are simplifying it for UPSC purposes. Please remember, we are not here to do PhD in ethics. We are here for understanding it to apply to UPSC. Clear? So progressive, it should be progressive. If there is a government law which says or which restricts happiness of maximum number of people, it should be updated. It should be modified. The other day we discussed what the volunteers example. So volunteers are there to maximize the happiness or welfare of maximum number of students, but they are not doing their job. So we have to update it. Yes or no? That is what we have done in the case study, right? And it's empirical. It's not hypothetical scenario. That means we should have a concrete evidence. If the boat is sinking, definitely 10 people should be thrown, only then we will survive, and that should be based on some empirical data. Let's say I have thrown 10 people, they died, then the 30 also died. It was only assumption, right? It's not a correct way. Then you cannot apply utilitarian principle. So if any of these principles are not applied or followed, then that case study doesn't deserve utilitarian approach. You cannot come to a conclusion whether it's a good decision or a bad decision using this particular principle. On your whim and fancies, you assumed if I kill 3 people, I will survive. That is not greater good for greater number of people.
Empirical thing, will we see the past occurrence or the future one?
As you have mentioned in the doctor case, okay, we are using empirical data, right? 68 years, 52 years, already diseases are there, diseases are not there. So present circumstances which come through your past, but on today basis, right? As in that situation basis, again I am deciding whether to save him or not based on that particular second. Yes. See, again we haven't discussed what are the traits of that particular businessman. We don't want to know whether he's a drunkard, whether he's a wife beater, whether he's a serial killer in silence. No, nobody. We don't go into those details. He came to my hospitals and I'm treating on the merit. Optimistic, right? At the end of the day, utilitarianism is all about applying science and knowledge to maximize the happiness. So utilitarian principles don't apply for negative scenarios, that you don't use it for promoting evil or badness in the society. Are we clear? So again remember, we use any theory or any knowledge in the ethics for one purpose and one purpose only, that is to decide whether the decision is good or a bad decision. Yes. So if I have to throw for 10 people out of the boat in that example, end and utility, greater happiness for greatest number of people, 30 people will survive. This law pass, right? It's democratic. I am not differentiating if there is abandoned. So here I am working towards a greater principle. So there is no obstruction to that particular thing. It's a unique scenario. Next, it's empirical. As I told you, the captain or some crew members sat and decided, okay, boat is loading this much weight, or this many people are extra burden. So through some analysis I came to a empirical data. Then it's an optimistic scenario. Happiness can be maximized. I am trying to save the maximum number of people. Are we clear? Yes. Next. So this is simple value addition I have added. What is the difference between happiness and pleasure? So as I told you, pleasure maximization is different from happiness maximization. Happiness is a different thing. Pleasure is what? Eating ice cream is pleasure, but that can also be called as happiness. But here happiness have a different connotation. Happiness is related to mind, whereas pleasure is related to human body. Yes. So I donated some amount of money so that 100 kids will get educated. That is kind of happiness to my soul or mind. Yes or no? Pleasure is of shorter duration. Happiness is long term, very easy. Happiness encompasses both pleasure and pain. As I told you, pleasure can be happiness also. There is an evaluative element in happiness versus pleasure. Yes, if I eat an ice cream, but if the same money, if I can get someone educated, so there is always an objective criteria. Now, how do I come to the decision that what is happiness? We are saying maximize happiness, right? So how do I measure happiness? So happiness is net outcome, as we have concluded the village example. So how many people are dying, how many people are surviving is the net outcome, greater or not intensity. Like how deeply am I affecting the happiness? Yes, it should not be superficial, it should be in depth. 10 people sacrifice their life so that you can live for 1 more hour. Yes or no? So that is not either intensity or duration. It fails both the tests. Longevity, right? You should, if you are doing something, it should have long term ramifications. If all of you are collectively dying, why don't you die at the same time? Why should 10 people die to give you one more hour of life? Yes. Then fulfillment, a type of happiness and satisfaction. What are you getting out of that thing? Yes. And lastly, the act to produce the result. 10 people sacrificed and the 30 will definitely survive. Only then it is called as happiness. If I hypothetically assume I throw 10 people, then 30 will survive. That fails the first test, and that is also not happiness. Yes. So if you understand utilitarianism through these two prisms, it's very easy for you to say not everything is utilitarian very quickly. Yes, that simple line, greater happiness for greater number, is just a tip of the iceberg. You need to go in depth to apply the rules and regulations. Are we clear? Yes. Now, quickly before we conclude, there are two types of utilitarianism. One is act utilitarianism and the other one is rule utilitarianism. That is where her principle will come into the picture. So act utilitarianism is what? Like if I have done some act, it will maximize the happiness and I have done it. More or less like rule of thumb. Yes or no? So I am carrying 10 eggs in one hand, 1 egg in the other hand. If I stumbled on the steps, okay, it's easy for me to throw the 1 egg and catch the 10 eggs with both my hands. It's like rule of thumb, right? You don't even have to think. Yes or no? 1 terrorist versus 10 innocents. Without second thought, you will shoot the terrorist. So these are very easy things to do. But if something has been done to you, or if you are about to do something, if it becomes a rule, will you still do it? I am not bringing Kant here. Please remember, I am not bringing in Kant's categorical imperative here. I am simply asking you, if you have done something for greater good, and if that is made into a rule, okay, is it still worth making into a rule, or will it be followed by everyone? For example, lying. I am lying to save the life of a person, right? So if everybody starts lying to save the life of a person, is it okay?
Depends on the situation.
You are creating a new moral imperative, right? You are creating a new moral problem rather than solving a problem. For example, my friend is a murderer. If the police caught him, they will kill him. So I am lying to save his life. So it should be technically correct, right? I mean, in my perspective. See, please read the definition. Rule utilitarianism is a principle which follows the rules which will result the greatest rule of greater happiness. So this is the line you have to remember. If majority of the people following certain rule, that is immoral, which would be negative. If everybody starts lying, then it will create an immoral society. Yes, please read the example, it will be easy for you. I hope it's visible.
For utilitarianism already in the bread example. Eating of bread.
But their maximization of happiness, yeah, you can say in one way.
Like it is setting a new precedent which is not good for the
See, act is the consequence are simply based on simple things, whereas rule is you should ask yourself a question whether what I am going to do is going to set a precedent. Is it worth emulating? The doctor example. Yes. So I am applying certain standards there. Okay. Now again, please read the PDF in your free time. It will make more sense. What is the advantage of rule utilitarianism? Rule utilitarianism has one simple purpose, that is to keep checks and balances on utilitarian principles. Okay, it will act as a limitation on blindly applying the logics of consequentialisms. Right? Every time you are about to do something, what would the result be if everyone followed the rule and followed this as act? Yes or no? In the doctor example, for example, think about it. That 68-year-old person is your family member and the 52-year-old person is a stranger. So if you still take the 68-year-old person with severe respiratory diseases and prefer him because he is a family member, you are maximizing the happiness for a different set of rules. But if everybody follows this, don't we think it will create an immoral society? Yes or no? Yes, I hope it's a very simple way to understand the thing.
Like moral, just it's up to his own concept, like what he thinks.
Again, what will, if everybody starts doing the same thing, automatically that will become a new standard in the society, right?
But ultimately, we go for individual. He sees for his happiness maximization.
That is where ethics comes into the picture, right? That is where your hypocritical oath will come into the picture. We will go for applied ethics. We will talk about doctors, right? Doctor has a duty to protect every patient that comes to him. So he has to make a lifetime decision. So he should prefer that person with least ailments, survivability, rational rather than emotional, right? Yes, that's clear.
It's basically ethical.
Which one?
Like when we are talking about that situation.
If you do the right thing, it's ethical. If you are not doing the right thing, it becomes unethical or unethical. Yes, unethical only. Fine, I understand.
It doesn't deal with the moral of the.
Again, if everybody starts following the same thing, just like the Akbar Birbal example, right? If everybody assumes that I am pouring water, nobody will notice, then the society will fall into chaos. Okay. Next. So, what are the problems with utilitarianism? Any doubts on the utilitarian concept so far? Right? Again, as I told you, you are not going to use any one principle to solve ethics case studies, right? You will throw in everything possible, so that your ethics answers will be mix of everything, and we will arrive at a new ethical standard. Let's say utilitarianism is here. Okay, your personal moral values are here, the ethical standards are here, so we will try to move up here by using that also. We will take everything on the path. Yes, sedimentary deposits, right? We take everything we learn, and in the end we will say justice, fairness, consequentialism, John Rousseau, Hobbes, everyone, and this is the best course of action. We won't say this is the only course of action. When I discuss about Kant or some other thinkers, I will say the doctor should also consider the means. Yes or no? For today I am saying yes, the police officer can plant the evidence. Tomorrow I will argue he has a duty. Deontology, right? Duty. You have an obligation to do the duty as you are supposed to do that. Then utilitarianism failed there. You are understanding, right? So we will take the same scenarios and start applying different. So sedimentary approach, we will take everything in the path, and in the end, before depositing into the ocean, we will come to deltas. Yes or no? Yes, geography done. Okay, so maximum happiness for maximum number of people is very difficult and subjective and result to interpretations. Yes or no? So have you seen Brooklyn 99? Yes, Brooklyn 99. So there is one episode where Gina scolds that Rose for sinking in the Titanic. Like there was ample space in the door, yes, and the plank. Both of them could have survived. The Titanic hero and heroine, like hero drowns and the heroine survives, right? So she criticizes her. There was enough space on the board. Both of them could have survived. Okay, so that's a subjective interpretation, right? And I agree with her. Yes. So measure happiness. So how do you measure happiness? It's very difficult and a subjective interpretation. So it's concerned about consequences regardless of the action itself. So I am doing something wrong by planting evidence. What are the ramifications? Yes. So yes. Again, not everything we do will have immediate results. So sometimes it might take some delayed amount of results to be produced. Okay, and happiness should not be the only consequences or goal in the ethical dilemmas. Yes, as I told you, here happiness is not the only rule, right? I'm destroying the job that I'm doing. I'm setting a bad precedent. I'm creating a lot of problems. And majority minority principle can also be argued here. If majority comes together, any majority, right, and they say this is greater good for greater happiness. For example, Israel-Palestine issue. Israelis are building a wall, so they are arguing that it's for greater good, maximum happiness for maximum people. So how can you argue that? That's unethical, right? Yes or no? You know, no controversial, but think about it. Article 370's dilution or lockdown for 1 year. For the greater good of India, you people have to suffer for 1 year only, right? So applying utilitarian principle, it should be fine in its own sense, because 1 year down the line, you are more united. Yes, terror attacks have reduced, so on and so forth. But we are discussing only the ends, not the means. Yes. Now we will go back to something very, very trivial but very important to throw everything into disarray. The golden rule that we should not do to others what we don't want to be done to ourselves. Yes or no? That's called as golden rule in ethics, right? Don't do to others what you don't want to be done to yourself. So applying this, don't you think our happiness and everything change, our decisions change? Do you want to be that person who is locked down for 1 year? Do you want to be that person who is on the ventilator and somebody else will choose his family member over your life? Don't you feel wrong?
If we have ignorance of all such moral values, I think we obviously choose the good one.
Good decision, right? In the same example, let's say Alessandro is my family member, right? So I saved him. Tomorrow, if I am in the bed, okay, and Jason's family member is a doctor, then what will happen? The golden rule. What? Karma, right? That is when your karma theory will come into the picture, or else it should not come into the picture. Yes or no? I hope you understand. And there is a very in-depth understanding that is needed to be developed to understand karma theory. Karma theory is not like water in a bottle. There are two different bottles. One is the good bottle, there is a bad bottle. When we think, when we are doing good, the bad is reducing. That is not the case. Bad is still 1 liter only. Okay, good will increase or decrease, which will affect the impact of the bad. Okay, it's not like water is moved into one jug into the another jug. That is not how karma theory works, right? So again, you understand the concept of golden rule, right? So if you are in the receiving end, as you told, you are the crew member. If you are the crew member, will you be happy? Because the boat is yours. You should also be thrown. Yes? Are we clear? Again, see, when we discuss about applied ethics and all these things, we will keep coming back to again and again and again. Let's say I have introduced driverless cars, artificial intelligence based ethics, right? So millions of drivers will lose their jobs, but roads will get more safer. Should we apply utilitarian principle? Greater good for greater number of people. Road safety versus thousands of jobs. Which one do you prefer?
You are a driver.
If you are a driver, yes. What will you do?
But then that's an endless cycle, right?
No, that is where policy, no, that is the beauty of decision maker, right? You provide alternative jobs. You try to start developing because you know you don't want to be the driver. What will you do as a policy maker? You will ask Google, Tesla and everyone to deposit $100 billion to create alternative jobs. Yes, so that understanding will help you to find solutions. I am not saying you will justify. Remember the yesterday case study? I told you, you will never satisfy all the drivers, but you can find an objective solution. What is the objective solution? Make the same companies create jobs. Make the same government create jobs. You are the government who allowed driverless cars, right? You are also the government who should be responsible for welfare of the people. So these principles are going to make you a better policy maker, not an ethical thinker. We don't want to compete with Michael Sandel, right? We want to get 120 plus in ethics paper. So a good humane policy maker is who also bothers about the job loss. I will also talk about environmental ethics. By introducing driverless cars, we will reduce pollution. Quality of life will be increased. So in any sense of the term, good outweighs the bad. But that doesn't nullify the bad. Bad is job loss, unemployment generation. So what should be done to reduce the burden of unemployment? I am not saying every Uber driver will be employed, but at least 60 to 70% of them can be employed. That is how ethics apply. As I told you, that is what deposit is, right? You take everything, you put it in your brain. One day, when you start implementing things, you will become a better thinker. Okay, I should also think about the families of Uber drivers. Yes, so that made you sensitive. So first of all, you identified a problem. Clear? So I hope that is enough for today. So I will share the PDF. We will discuss the rest of the things in the PDF tomorrow. Again, please remember, you are not here to read philosophy. You are here to read ethics for UPSC. Never ever forget that. You don't need to know the favorite dish of Bentham. Yes or no? So how are you going to use this in the case study? That's all you need. Clear? That is more than enough. Okay, right. See you tomorrow.